and Twitter. Okay, so we're now live. Let me just play the countdown. Hi everyone, and welcome to another stream. Tonight I am back. I have been on holiday, and tonight I am joined by Christian Lechner. Christian, how are you, sir?
I'm fine. I'm really fine. Thanks for having me.
No, nice to have you on. Yeah, thank you for coming on. So tonight we are going to chat about the Azure Developer CLI. I almost said developer. I always forget the word developer.
That's the most important part.
So Christian, for people who don't know who you are, give us a little bit of background on who Christian Lechner is. Give your.
Yeah. So my name is Christian Lechner. So that's I'm living in Germany, in Bavaria, and the very eastern part. And well, my origins are indeed in the SAP world. So I started back then after my studies of physics in the area of SAP development. And made my way through there. And over the last already several years, let's say 5 to 7, I kind of mixed the worlds up. So I combined SAP with Microsoft, with Azure, with a bit of Power Platform, a bit of the Office stuff. And currently, I'm indeed working for SAP as a development architect.
Oh, nice.
And I'm currently acting as a product owner for a Terraform provider that we are building.
Oh, very cool.
So yeah, that's definitely from a technical perspective super cool. Currently, a little bit too many political discussions about that, but
I want to ask you about Bicep or Terraform. Then I won't go into that.
Yeah. So we can also talk an hour about the relicensing stuff, but yeah, no impact on us. So I'm working on that one, and as you, I have the honor to be a Microsoft MVP in the area of Azure. So I'm, as I said, mostly focusing on app development, kind of a developer at my heart. Working with serverless and that stuff.
Doing lots of Azure stuff. Yeah.
So trying to bring those worlds together. I also have kind of a weekly, let's call it, newsletter with kind of the best of thingies from my perspective from the area of Azure, focusing on serverless, focusing on things like Dapper or something like that.
Nice.
On GitHub, and where the Twilight Zone happens, so where SAP and Microsoft meet, where I share some news on a regular basis. Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. So tonight we're going to chat about the Azure Developer CLI. Now, this is fairly new, isn't it? It's not been out that long. How long has it been around for?
I think it's kind of a year-ish.
A year-ish.
So it went GA with Build this year. And since then it has a release cadence of a monthly release.
All right, cool.
So we are now already at 1.30 from a version perspective, and they are really pushing out the features like crazy.
Yeah, when I first started looking at it, I was thinking, why do we need this? You know, I was like, what is this? I think most people were a bit, even Scott Anselman was a wee bit like, what is this? Why do we need it? But I'll be honest with you, it's on my to-do list and I've not got around to it. So you're going to school me on this. I don't know too much about it. I know you can use it to spin up like an entire solution. That's what I'm really quite interested in. So do you want to tell us a little bit about it, or do you want to jump into slides? What would you prefer to do first?
I think I would like to address what you already touched a bit. Do we really need another CLI in the Azure space? Don't we have enough CLIs? So what's the problem they are trying to solve? So I would just, so bear with me some PowerPoints.
Yeah, let me just bring that up. There you go. What I'll do is I'll put us here so we're out of the way. Cool.
So you should see them now. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Perfect. So yeah, the Azure Developer CLI, as you said, is kind of the one CLI to rule them all from my perspective. So but that's a bit biased. So the main command is the azd-up command. So that's where you spin up everything, and that's kind of the the title that should frame this session. I already said everything about me, so we can jump over that. And the main question from my perspective, and that's what you already said, is why do we need this other CLI? Do we have a challenge, a specific challenge that it solves perfectly better than any other CLI? And let's take one step back and think about if we would start a new development project, being hired in a new company, starting a new project as a consultant somewhere. What are the steps in order to get you going to build as an app developer your first application in a new project? So first thing is setting up your development environment. So you would have to install the right tools. Let's say you're a Node developer or TypeScript developer, you have to install the right Node version, set up the tooling around that before you can get started. Then it would be great to have some basic app setup according to best practices. So your company provides some blueprints and you build your app upon that. Because as I said, I'm coming from the SAP area, so of course every app is special, but from a business perspective, well, you can define several blueprints and make life easier. Then as you probably want to do that in a professional manner, you have your app, then you want to define your infrastructure. Your infrastructure is code in order to set up the living room for your app code. When you have done that, you set up the CI/CD pipeline that should probably be in sync with your guidelines that are there within your within your company. And this is something that I guess SAP completely spoiled me. Of course, you have to be compliant with security and compliance baselines and all the stuff that is no fun for developers. But you have to do it. Now that sounds quite feasible. I mean that's doable. But at least from my experience, how does that really look like in the wild? You start your project and you get probably a manual, a Word document or something like that tells you, hey, we are using Node 16, but in reality we're using Node 18, so install Node 18. Of course, every project is special. Everybody has to reinvent the wheel, so every project has their own setup, which makes your life hard as a developer. Then you probably want to start, and the first thing you stumble across the development guidelines. Of course, there are not somewhere written or put into code somewhere, but you have, of course, the Word files, the wikis, or if it's super fancy, GitHub pages that describe how you should develop, which is kind of not the natural baseline for a developer. So you read that and you forget it.
Exactly.
Then you finally want to start to code. You want to make your hands dirty, and then you're looking for some samples. Usually, how does this company structure their code? What do they already have? Maybe some reusable libraries. Do they use some special frameworks that you have to bring in? And that's probably hidden somewhere in code samples, in templates that are spread out. You do not know if they are outdated, if they are really following the guidelines. So maybe you know somebody who knows somebody who told somebody that this might be quite cool. And then you of course set up all the nitty-gritty details around that, the infrastructure, the CI/CD, in the worst case from scratch, which also is no fun. And of course, then we come back to my beloved topic of security and compliance. You probably have endless wiki pages that are, from a legal perspective, perfectly fine, but don't help you.
Yeah, that sounds like every company I've ever worked at is exactly like this.
So that's something. Yeah, I mean, we have product standards at SAP, and I hope nobody from SAP is watching, but hey, yeah, they are great. They are perfectly great for being compliant, but not for helping a developer. Now, this I think is really a problem that we are all facing, and we face it in different nuances. So some companies are more professional there, some are less professional there, but everybody has their own way. And I think and here I'm biased, it would be great to have one tool to solve the challenge and one setup that is capable of covering all those requirements, at least to some extent. And yeah, I mean, I already spoiled that, otherwise we would have a very short conversation. I think the Azure Developer CLI is this one ring that will help us there. And why do I think that? Well, very shortly, I copied the outline of the Azure Developer CLI from Microsoft Learn. And basically what it's doing, it's exactly saying that what we are looking for. So Azure Developer CLI is an open source tool that hopefully accelerates you bringing your local development to Azure by providing best practices, by being developer friendly, by supporting all those single steps. So code, infrastructure, CI/CD, and even more. And the baseline is now something that is called within the AZD area extensible blueprint templates, which basically are a schema or a template which can include code, can include infrastructure, can include CI/CD setups. And you can use those setups that are delivered with AZD. You can use some templates that come from the community, and you can extend them. You can create your own ones. We will see in this talk how flexible you are there.
Okay, cool.
And I mean, that's kind of what's written on learn.microsoft.com. That is not necessarily true. So let's take a look at the CLI. So that one, put that one away. So let's start at the beginning. So there is, of course, a landing page for the Azure Developer CLI on the learn.microsoft.com page. This is where I took this information from. Now, I mean, the first stop you would do would how to get started. And there is one important section that I want to highlight, and that's supported languages and environments. So there is a bit of a constraint that you have to evaluate before you start. First, I think that's the not that important one. That's the supported development environments. So of course you have the CLI per se that you can run on your machine or in a dev container. And from the IDE perspective, it's Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio and the GitHub code spaces that you can use. So there is, if you are, for example, a Java developer, IntelliJ is not supported. But yeah, that's, I think one could live with that. What's now more important is not every compute service and consequently not every programming language is supported that is available on Azure. But from the perspective of an app developer, I would say the usual suspects and the most used ones are there. So we have the Azure App Service, of course. We have static web apps. We have Azure Container Apps. We have, close to my heart, Azure Functions. We have AKS and, which is quite new, Azure Spring Apps. And they are, well, living in different feature stages. So there are stable ones and there are better ones. For Kubernetes, it's quite obvious that the main restriction is you can only access projects that are deployable via kubectl apply. So there is no Helm deployment support yet. That's something that might be a bit restricting. And of course, when you think about Azure Functions, for example, it's quite clear that not every programming language is supported. So there is also a restriction from the programming language side. But I would say also fair. So you have Node.js, you have Python, you have .NET, and you have Java. Of course, then always with the versions that are available there. So I think with Azure Functions, there is now support for .NET 8, if I'm not mistaken, and Node.js it's 20 and at 18. So absolutely more than okay. But that's something that you have to keep in mind. So it's not like you can use everything. And If you're fine, then, well, the next step, of course, is installing the Azure Developer CLI. And there you have different options. All operating systems are supported, so that's quite nice from a developer's perspective. So you can use Windows, you can use Linux, you can use a Mac, or you can spin up a dev container, which contains the Azure Developer CLI, so you don't have to have anything installed locally. And I think that's also super convenient. So you have support for the usual package managers, either on Windows, on Linux, the main distributions are supported. You can, of course, always install that via script. For Mac, there is one special thingy. So it's supported, of course, via Homebrew. But if you're using Apple Silicon, and here the documentation is outdated, it describes that you have to install it manually. That's not true. You can now also use the scripting approach, and you have one additional parameter where you can specify the architecture that you want to download. So if you have, I think it's -- arch, and then space, and then ARM64, then you can install it on Apple Silicon via command a curl command. That works. So that's just not yet updated within the documentation.
Cool.
So I would say let's give it a spin.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
So I have installed it indeed locally on my Windows machine. So I have it here. It's the latest version. So as I said before, or it was part of the slides, it's open source. So you can directly jump to the GitHub repository. It's in the Azure org. It's called Azure-Dev. And there you see it's the 1.3.0 is the latest release. So yeah, everything is there that you need to know. And now let's try it out and see what help tells us what we could do with the Azure Developer CLI. And that's already quite extensive. So you have some introductory sentences, then you have several commands that are grouped. So you have basically, with these commands and these commands groups, the life cycle that you would walk through with your Azure Developer CLI project. So you would probably first configure your setup, you would authenticate with Azure, you would initialize a new project or a new application based on templates. I mean, that's kind of the main pillar. And then if you're happy with your setup, you would manage your resources and your app deployment also via AZD. So the super command is the up. So that just shoots everything from infrastructure to the app deployment to Azure. And the counterpart would be down, but you can also split that up. So you can just provision the infrastructure, you can just deploy your app, you can also just package your app if you want to. That's that part. And then there are some commands that are, from my perspective, more or less shortcuts that allow you to get the right reference for your app, for example, for monitoring or for setting up your pipeline on GitHub or Azure DevOps.
Very cool.
What's now really, I think, kind of showcases the mindset from my perspective of the Azure Developer CLI is usually when you start the help, then it tells you these are the commands, have fun and find out how they work. Here you have now an additional little section that tells you, hey, probably what you want to do first is AZD init with a template. Okay, I don't know which template name I should use. Okay, then I should run AZD up. And here I find a command which tells me which templates are available. Okay, so let's try that one out. So this one will now give us hopefully a list of templates that are supported by the Azure Developer CLI, and that's new with 1.3.0. This one is configurable, and by default, it fetches the sample code that is available on the awesome AZD website. I will tell a little bit about that later, if I do not forget it. This is the website where you have a lot of samples from the community, from the Microsoft folks, and from the Azure Developer folks there. And as you can see, there are tons of stuff. And the historic templates are those to-do templates. So these are kind of the core templates of the AZD. It's a to-do app. It's, I think, a very good starting point because it's not trivial. We will see it in a second. And you already see what is supported. So you have a to-do app with C#, with a Cosmos DB, with a SQL Server, or with Java, or with Node.js. And yeah, you have to guess a bit. So if there is no addition there, it's app service. ACA is Azure Container Apps, AKS, Kubernetes, and so on. And you also have to check, as you can see here, we also have Terraform in the game. So those without dash Terraform or minus Terraform are bicep-based, and the one with minus Terraform are Terraform-based.
Very cool.
So this is already, I think, a huge list, and you already get, I think, a bit confused maybe by that, but let's just do AZD init. So we want to initialize an AZD project with a template. So basically, we want to download that, and what we will do is we will take this Azure Samples to do Node.js Mongo, which is a Node.js app leveraging Cosmos DB, running on app service. Now, one thing, if you do that at home, do that within an empty directory.
Okay.
You will see in a second why I say that. And I did that once in my home directory. This is not a smart idea. But you have to learn the hard way sometimes. So what it does now, it initializes everything. You have to enter an environment name. Okay. So you can structure that setup, for example, like you would stage your development. So dev, test, prod, or something like that. You can give anything else. So let's say talk AZD Gregor, for example. That's also then used in the prefixing of the stuff. And what you can see here now, thanks to Oh My Posh, we have 148 files. If you have done that in your home directory, have fun with cleaning up, because there are some. So let's open that up. I just want to make it big. And as you can see here, there is really a quite extensive structure already. And now, before I dive into that structure, because deployment of this app takes some time, I have prepared exactly the same app in a different folder. And what I will do now is say AZD up. So I will use this one command, this ring of power, and we'll tell it go to West Europe, and then it's doing the magic.
So that's now deploying that to Azure.
That's now packaging the app. That's now setting up the infrastructure, and that's now deploying the app to Azure.
Oh, nice.
And that I did some dry runs, so that takes some time, and I didn't find a way to kind of bridge the 10 minutes with telling jokes. So
what kind of stuff do you get in the folders? You get dev container.
So yeah, so that's kind of the first thingy there, which if you think about the points that I had on my slides, you have to set up your development environment. Now, if you're a Node developer, I don't know, I'm not from the .NET world, but Node development is not super funny because you have a lot of different versions, a lot of different setups, and everybody has kind of find the philosopher's stone and knows best how to do it. Well, just put it into a dev container. Everybody has to use that one, and your you're safe from my
Cool.
perspective. You don't have to wrap your head around things that had no value, basically. And that's available out of the box. And what's really nice is, as you can see already here, there is no Docker file. So it uses a base image, not the latest one. So pull request already in the back of my head for that one. And it then uses features. So it has some predefined features, which is, I don't know if that's super new, but it wasn't there from the beginning with dev containers, if I remember correctly. Basically, what this says is it executes in some scripts and adds the Azure Developer CLI to your dev container. But you do not have to do any Docker magic in order to get that going.
Very cool.
That's really great. Then of course you have the extensions that might be usable or are pre-thought there. I mean, it's all up to you. That's just a template.
Yep.
You have some basic port forwarding. You have from a let's say security perspective, not the root user, but the node user as a remote user. And you also have some first hint if you would spin that up within GitHub Codespaces. What are the requirements for that one? So yeah, big check mark on setting up the dev environment, because that's already done for you. Then there are some tons of folders and several files. Just one thing that I would like to mention is within the to-do app samples, there is a kind of a stacked git ignore strategy. So you have one git ignore at the root folder and then the other ones in the source folder, so in your code. Okay. So don't be surprised that there is just .azure, which is excluded.
Yeah, that's different.
That's kind of, if you're a node developer, that's the first time that your blood pressure rises, because do I persist my node modules? Please don't do that. It just excludes the .azure file here, or directory, which contains your configuration.
Okay.
So that's where your environment variables are stored, and that's included by default. Now the the main file that makes an AZD project is this azure.yaml file.
Okay.
That's the manifest. It's not really complicated, but I think it's smart and very useful. What's already cool is it's backed by a YAML language server, so you have type ahead support. So you are quite safe from putting in something wrong with respect to the structure first and foremost, but also to the values. And basically what it says, well, it says this app or this project has a name. Okay, cool. Then there is a template that it's based on, so some metadata that you can define. And this is already something I think is quite nice from an enterprise perspective, because this way you can filter out which projects might be relying on outdated templates and which you need to update.
Yep.
So that's already something that looks a bit over-engineered from the start. Why do I have to have the template in there? But I think that's really super useful in the long run. And then you have a section which defines the services. So that's the app code. And the sample has two services, so a front end and a back end. And what you define, or what you tell the Azure Developer CLI, you tell it, where is my source code? So it's here in the source folder with those two subfolders, API and web. You can define where your deployment artifacts lie, depending on which framework, for example, you use. You define the language, and this is already something where you can see that there is this YAML backing. So you have only those languages that are also supported. Of course, in flavors, so you have F# and .NET and C#, and yet from my perspective as a Node and Go developer, you have JavaScript and TypeScript.
Yeah.
I don't know, Python should be the same. I guess some historic things happened here. And then you have the same game for the host. So here you have the AKS, the app service, and so on.
All right, cool.
So that's really quite helpful. Now, as we said before, you also could specify your infrastructure, right? And usually you would now expect an infrastructure section here, I guess, within the manifest file. Now, there is some defaulting. So what you have here is you can introduce an infra section where you can define the path where your infrastructure definition lies, as well as the provider. Now, if you define your infrastructure in a folder that's called infra in the root of your project, and if you use Bicep, you don't have to specify that section.
Okay.
Now, the funny thing is, as I said before, Terraform is supported. It's in alpha stage. That sounds severe, but that's just due to the fact that the AZD team does not get enough feedback around Terraform, how things are working, if they are working fine. So they put it to alpha. The point is that it's excluded from the language server. So you get an error here if you specify it, but you can use it. So you have this red curl is there. But as we are using Bicep, as we are using the infra folder, all good, all fine. So that's kind of where things come together for the Azure Developer CLI. There might be changes there as far as I saw in the GitHub issues, but I think that's far ahead. Now, if you want to build an app, you want to have this basic setup, and well, there are templates for basically everything out there. This one is now front end, back end, React front end with a back end, typical Node.js layout with the corresponding configurations. So nothing really surprising here. As I said, here you have the git ignore, which then is the language specific. So that makes sense to not clutter the other git ignore with all that stuff. And also keeping it self-contained, depending if you are working with a monorepo or multi-repo approach. So that can make sense from my perspective.
Yeah.
And you also have tests. That's something that I appreciate, because usually that if you have those hello world kind of examples, tests are never there.
No.
Of course, as developers, we test in production, right? So that's, I think, even if they're not perfect or if they might not be perfect, that's kind of pushing the developer in the right direction.
I like it.
But from a source code perspective, nothing special, except for, yes, there is now a setup where I can build upon, where I can start from.
Very nice indeed.
So that's already, I think, quite useful. And if you take a look at the other templates, you find a lot of stuff there. Now, what, from my perspective, where the sample, the AZD samples really shine is the infrastructure. So here we have set up around Bicep. So we have, of course, the main parameters.json, and you have the main Bicep file, which contains the overall setup. As you can see, the target scope for Bicep here is subscription-based. That was kind of the only option you had when AZD came out first. Now you can also have a scope that's resource group based.
Okay.
So that's kind of, I wouldn't call it relict. It's just you have those two options. You can have the target scope subscription, or you can have the scope resource group. Now this sample has still the subscription thingy. And then, well, you have a lot of Bicep happening. You have the setup of the resource group. You have the front-end application with the corresponding web app settings. You have the back-end application that are referencing some modules. So it's not the naked resource, but it's referencing some modules. We will dive into that. You have, of course, the Cosmos DB, so kind of the usual infrastructure. And then something that I also like about AZD is it wants to at least give you the push in the right direction. And it wants to be following best practices. So in order to store secrets, it spins up a key vault and also wires up your backend with I think the backend with the key vault. It introduces monitoring, so you have log analytics, you have application insights in there with the standard setup. So this is really something that I think is very beneficial for companies to use that as a guidance. So do not just set up the development bits and pieces, your database, your hosting, and then you're fine. But also think about all those things that should then cover your cross-functional requirements and your monitoring and all those stuff. What's also in there as an optional part is the API management. So you can decide if your front end directly talks to your backend or if your front end is mediated via an API management and then calls your backend. I think, well, okay to as a copy and paste, using it as a copy and paste template. I think it's a bit oversized for that app, but it shows you what's possible and it shows you how to also steer if you're new to Bicep, if something gets created or not.
I've got a question for you on this.
Yeah.
You've got if use APIM. So when you spin this up, do you need to change the parameter to true for use APIM if you want to use APIM?
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. So it's that's a very important point. So don't get a heart disease or faint away. The default is false.
Right. Okay.
So by default there is no Azure API management spinning up because then
how does it know which tier to use? Is there a bit in there that says use APIM but use this tier, or does it default to dev? It's probably in the template somewhere. Sorry, I'm asking really weird questions.
No, so basically, I mean, you can of course then bring that in as an external variable, but so the template per se kind of does not give you the burden of the API if the API management if you use it the first time. So
this is cool stuff. Yeah, this is nice.
So you really have to, you really have to dig through the parameters because there are some. So it works without doing anything. But as you said, if I want to have, for example, a dev setup and then a staging, I usually have a bit of a different setup. And of course, a completely or stage and prod usually are quite similar or the same. So you really have to work through those parameters if you use a template because there is a lot of work that is done for you.
Yeah.
But you should take a look at especially the modules, what's happening underneath.
Yeah. It's very nice that they've done this though. There's quite a lot in here. Yeah.
Yeah, that does. So and we just are on the tip of the iceberg. So we have, of course, this app folder, which, as you can see, contains the module for the API. Cool. So for the backend, for the API management, for the database, and for the front end.
That's pretty cool.
And that's something that I think is super cool. At least for the classic for the AZD to-do apps, there is one folder that's called Core, and that contains all those modules that you would use as building blocks for setting up databases.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So you do not have to. I mean, it's doable, but
I even like the way it's structured.
Yeah, absolutely. So I absolutely liked it. So it's kind of for me, it's kind of intuitive where things are.
Yeah, I mean, what we do at work is we've probably got like a modules folder, and each modules folder, like, so Cosmos would have a Cosmos folder, and in there will be the Cosmos bicep files, and then we'll SQL Server, and I like this. This is quite nicely laid out.
So that's kind of what's really delivered by the AZD team, and that's reused by let's take that one. That's then used, as you can see here, by the module. So from you jump from main to API and then to that module, and there is quite some stuff going on in between. So you really have to, in order to have a decent understanding, walk through that, because otherwise you might miss how some parameters are set that are either hidden somewhere in between, defaulted there, or that are really sometimes hard-coded defaulted. So for example, you have no chance, at least with this template, to set the runtime version.
Yeah, okay.
So that's something that you have to know. On the other hand, if you take a look at that, I mean, you also do not have to deal with some fancy properties and how to set them.
It's very cool. I'm learning quite a lot just looking at this. Yeah.
And there's one more thing that I really like. You see here this abbreviations.json. That's something that's loaded into the main file. Where is it? Am I blind? Here.
Yeah, line 34. Yeah.
So here you have all the prefixes.
That's cool.
That are following the best practices. So I mean, that's kind of an endless discussion, but now you have it, and there is no more.
That makes it more consistent. Yeah, I like that.
So, and I mean, it's a proposal, but I think even if you think you have to define your own prefixes, then you have something to start with. So how do you do that? Do it that way.
Yeah, this is why I like these things. You can learn quite a lot from this.
Yep. So you don't need to take it one by one, but you see, okay, that's how you would do it. Maybe I have to have some different abbreviations, but then that's how I should do it. So that's super valuable from my perspective.
Yeah, I like the way that's laid out and things like that. All the abbreviations is quite nice too. Yeah.
So that's kind of the infrastructure. So again, I would say check mark around setting up the infrastructure. So that's something that can be done. Now, one question that might now come to your head or not, or it will come to your head when you do an AZD up. How does the Azure Developer CLI know where to put the API and the web service? So it knows where the code lies, and it knows it has to use the app service, okay? But where does it know that, taking a look at the main, that this is the front end, the back end should be put here? So it's not obvious, and I tell you a secret because I stumbled across that at the very first beginning. And I think it's a very elegant solution from my perspective, but you happy if you disagree. You have to tag your resource with the key AZD service name, and the value has to match wrapper API. So in this case, it has to match the API.
Okay.
And this is how the AZD then wires the things up.
That's interesting.
So that's something that I think I don't know where they have that from. I know that a lot from Kubernetes artifacts, where you do a lot with those taggings and then setting things up, wiring things up. I really like that.
Yeah, so that's pretty nice actually.
I first had no idea when building
it.
How the heck do you wire that up? I do not get it. I put it in then some kind of hard coded. And then I had opened up an issue and asked, hey, folks, that cannot be the way to go, and I have no idea how to do it. And then, well, it's just this tag. That's the magic.
That's very cool.
And if you know that, you're basically within your company the AZD expert, if you can explain that.
Yeah.
So that's infrastructure. Then what else do we have on the list? We had CI/CD, right? So what about CI/CD? Of course, not every CI/CD pipeline is supported. So the Azure Developer CLI supports, as you can see here, Azure DevOps and GitHub Actions. Now, I am not an Azure DevOps guy, but I think that looks
that looks exactly. Yep.
Reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more the GitHub Actions guy, to be honest. And there you can see, okay, you have as a trigger usually the push to the main branch, or the master if you still have that in some legacy setups. And then what you basically do is, well, you check out the code.
Yep.
And since I think 2 releases, so 2 months basically, Azure has an own, AZD has an own GitHub action. So you just have to call the GitHub action to set up AZD within your runner. You install, in this case, Node. And then you have 2 login flows that are supported. So either via federated credentials or client credentials. This is something that you have to do manually.
You have to set them manually there.
Yeah. So you have to have your Azure credentials stored into secrets because that's nothing that could be automated. And with that, the authentication flow is done. And then I think that's also new. I think in the very first versions, they just had an AZD up, which I absolutely did not like within a CI/CD workflow. So now it's really split between, hey, we provision the infrastructure, and then we deploy the app.
Would you not? Silly question here, but see if you scroll up to the secrets, would you not just deploy this and then it would break, and then you would go into the GitHub action and then go to the secrets and then put this in?
Yeah.
Or are you actually editing this file and putting the credentials in?
To be honest, it will fail on the first run.
Yeah. And then you just go and change it
and then you change it, because if you the point is you're kind of in a dilemma here, because you make the first push to main.
I'm just worried that people try and push this with this with their credentials in this file.
So I mean, what you always can do is first set up your GitHub repository, then put in your secrets, and then push that up. With the AZD pipeline command, you can do that automatically.
Right. Okay. Brilliant.
So just this one thingy will fail, and that will fail quite early.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
So that's okay. Anyway, there is no better way to do it. So because due to this trigger, you have to do that. The only thing that you could do with the first, when you first deployed it, in order to be to not let that run unintentionally, is comment out the push. So you then have just to go through this flash. So you would just first deploy it, get everything set up neatly, and then comment that in, and then do the stuff. So that would make sense.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and as you also see, I mean, it's kind of course they have to do that, but you have this --no prompt option in the command line, which will then tell AZD that it has to expect everything from the environment variables that you would usually, if you do it on the terminal, put in maybe interactively. So
this is awesome that it does all this.
Yeah, so that's kind of all the things that are part of AZD.
I mean, that's a lot of work done for you, though. I mean, even if you didn't want this and you wanted to change it, you've got a very good starting point.
Absolutely, and that's just again not everything that you can do with AZD. But I think from the list that I created in the PowerPoint, and of course that was a bit motivated by how the Azure Developer CLI project is laid out. But we also have the CI/CD topic covered. So you really have a super decent starting point with a lot of best practices. So that's just cool.
What was the AZD awesome thing you were going to show us? Because I remember you were going to come back to that.
Yeah. I also just wanted shortly to show you the setup. So that's kind of what happens when you do AZD up.
Yeah.
So you if there is some environment variable not yet set, or some configuration not yet set, you have to choose it. Then it does some pre-packaging. And it does some strange things that we should maybe look at. Then it does a packaging of the backend, of the front end. It provisions the infrastructure, and then it deploys the service. And you also have the links available here, so you can directly jump either to the resource group, so you can jump here and take a look what's there. We can also jump to the front end. That's hopefully the front end. Oh, come on. Where you have the studio, and that's really working. So that's also something that I like. It's not just a, hey, this is hello world thingy, but there is really quite some stuff happening here.
That's
so
very cool, actually. It was good for doing demos. Yeah.
Apps. So for let's say also the pre-sale sales folks, that's some power that they have.
Indeed.
And of course, we can then also do the AZD down, which will just delete everything. And yeah, I'm brave. As we have a keyword, I say purge the keyword. And as I don't want to key in yes, I do -.
What would happen if you've done several AZ ups? So say you've deployed several different projects. How does it know which one to take down here?
You have to define that. So you define that with AZD-env. So you define the environment. That's kind of what we keyed in at the very beginning when we initialized the project. And then you can have different environments, and of course you have to be careful what you do, especially if you do something like that.
And one other question is, if you deploy this, does it randomly pick like a key vault name, or is it a parameter?
That from the to-do app, you have the prefix, as you can see here, and then it puts some random value on that. The only thing where you have a bit of so just talking about the to-do app. So you see here it concatenates the stuff, and from the resource group you see it's really taking the name of my environment.
Very cool.
But the rest is from the to-do app putting some.
But you could bend that to do whatever you wanted. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can basically adjust it however you want it. That's just, as I said before, this repository is just AZD init with the template.
Yeah.
Doing doing the authentication flow, setting the environment variables, basically the subscription that you want to use, and the region, as you saw. And then it's running. So that I did not do anything more, and you have already a completely running app there.
Which, as you said at the start, that's the hard part. Because I always complained to like Microsoft that learning Bicep's great, but putting an app together is the hard part. You know, making these services talk to each other is an art. It's not just like, okay, I'll spin up a key vault and then I'll spin up a web app and then I'll add SQL. But how do these talk? This is doing best practice for a lot of that.
Yeah.
And you get the Bicep or the Terraform, and you get the CI/CD. You get naming conventions. You get this is really cool actually.
So you really have the whole package, and exactly what you said. So wiring things then up. And fetching some information from the keyword, fetching the information from Cosmos DB to put it into keyword. That's kind of the not so funny part.
Yes,
and that's all there.
Yeah, and you can even look up. You could just open up the Bicep and learn from reading the Bicep. You know, that's kind of what I do quite well.
Absolutely,
this is really nice. Yeah. And how many templates are there out there just now? Is there a lot?
Yeah. Let's switch to the templates quickly.
Yeah, no.
So in general on GitHub, let me shortly check that. You can add a tag that's AZD templates, and you can look for that one. Nice. Or if you really are kind of community driven, there is a GitHub page. Which is this awesome AZD template page where you can put in a pull request. There is a description what you have to do. Let me shortly check. I think it's somewhere down here. Blah blah blah. Yeah, here, read this document. So there is a document on how you have to set up things and then open an issue if you want to contribute a template.
Nice. Nice.
Then folks will review that, and I don't think that there is a huge entry barrier. And what you can see here, they are overworking that. So you have a lot of filters here.
Oh, that's cool.
And I think they will make it a bit more usable, if I understand correctly. And then you have, at the moment, 64 templates.
Nice.
Of course, in the year of the Lord 2023, it has to be AI somewhere.
Yes, everywhere.
Of course, and ChatGPT, so that there is a lot of stuff here. I think in the Azure community, Pamela Fox is quite known from Microsoft, and she contributed a ton of templates, mostly with Python, that I don't like that much. But as you said, there is tons of bicep stuff in there that helps you a lot.
Very cool. Because what I've noticed a kind of trend recently, there's lots of new data and AI stuff coming, mainly data tools coming out. And the biceps, there's not a lot of templates for bicep for things like Databricks and Synapse and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
So that's from my perspective. Even so, I really don't like Python, but don't tell anybody. I really use those templates because she did some stuff with Azure Functions, in order to sort out some bicep issues that I had. And as you can see here, there's really tons of stuff here, and you see even SAP made it there.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, that's kind of the super special snowflake in there. But you see, there's really a lot of stuff there.
Brilliant. This is a lot further down the line than I thought it would be.
So let's take, for example, this simple one. You also can then that's also something I like. Then you see the setup. You have this infra function. You have the some other way how to define your source code, and you have the Azure.YAML file. So here, that's a little bit of a, I would say, not so best practice, but yeah, you can already take some stuff there. And what I also like is, and what I think is helpful if you start, who contributed that stuff.
Yeah.
So was it by
the
content team?
Yeah, that's quite cool. What about how easy is it to create your own template? You better just take it one and edit it a little bit.
So funnily, I when I started with the Azure Developer CLI, I took a project from the Azure Functions University that I was contributing, and I tried to do the setup with AZD, and that was not difficult. Okay. So basically, so at that point in time, I copied one to-do app, threw away everything that I didn't want to have, and kind of iteratively brought in my stuff.
Brilliant.
Now there is, that wasn't available in the list, but there are some basic starter templates that just give you, for Bicep and for Terraform, basically a project that consists of an Azure YAML file, the GitHub and the Azure DevOps file, folder, and an infra folder with, I think, not 100% sure on that, but with the core folder. So with this core modules. And then you can start from there if you really know what you're doing. I personally, so maybe I'm more the copy and paste guy. I take one sample, throw out what I don't need, and then bring in the rest.
I'd probably do the same, to be honest. Yeah.
So that's quite useful. So, but there is really tons out there, and there is usually also a layout what is really in there, as you can see here. So what's in there component wise, and there is also a little architecture diagram.
Very cool.
What is wired up with what? So that's really.
Yeah, well, that was one thing I always asked as well. Examples need to have kind of explanations, and the diagram helps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also helps you if you are looking for some specific bicep template, because if you want, for example, Azure Container Registry, then you know,
Mhm.
okay, I don't need the rest, but I can take a look at how they wired that up there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, there is one more thing, if that's okay, that I would like to
Yeah,
show.
of course, absolutely, yeah.
So let's bring that down. And yeah, for those of you who know Harry Potter, there is this mischief manager, and we have this one here. So that's kind of not the standard functionality of the Azure Developer CLI, but that's a very cool feature. Now I hope I have to check where I am. Here we go. Within the YAML file, there is one way to extend the overall flow that you have with AZD via hooks. So at very specific points, for example, at the life cycle of AZD, or at the service life cycle, so for example, pre-package, you can throw in scripts.
That's even better.
You can throw in PowerShell scripts or Bash scripts. You can, as I did here, which is the super primitive way, just put in the code, or you reference a script file. And the great thing is you have all the environment variables that are available at that point in time at your fingertips.
Nice.
So if you are after the infrastructure setup and you have within your bicep file defined those output variables,
you could get access to that.
They are all there.
Very cool.
So that's and there the documentation was improved. Yeah.
Is that just Azure? Is that just the Azure Developer CLI that can do that, or?
That's integrated part of the Azure Developer CLI.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's very cool.
That's something that they brought in. I think when they went GA, it was a first iteration. And in the meantime, the documentation catched up, and there are now really good description what you have to do or what you can do. You can also distinguish if you're running on Windows or POSIX, so a POSIX-based system, so Linux or macOS. If you want to execute PowerShell or if you want to execute Bash scripts. And there are quite some nice examples there, and also I think that's down at the end. Yeah, an example script on how to fetch all that stuff and what you have. So that's really,
that's awesome.
That's just cool.
Clever stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can see why you like this.
So that's really cool. So of course you can then also you have a command, as I said before, to set up your GitHub repository. So you do not have even to go to GitHub directly. You can do that via AZD pipeline, which will set up your private repository and put in your pipeline there as you specified it. So that's cool. And there is also one section that touches the question that you have, how to make your project compatible with the Azure Developer CLI. So either create a new template or convert a sample. So giving you some hints where should things be.
Yeah, I'm sold on this. I need to go and play a bit with this. Yeah, this is nice.
Yeah, I think that
definitely
that was it. Let me just shortly check if I forgot something. So of course, as you have seen, a colleague of Microsoft of mine contributed one sample. So this is really a non-trivial sample with an existing API management using the SAP Cloud SDK to hook things up with an SAP system. And that was doable. So that we did not get a gray hairs there in order to set that up, and at least not more. So that is, you can really set up basically everything. Mixing, matching things. So that's cool. And I really like the community around the Azure Developer CLI. So there is a monthly community stand-up where the product management team and the Azure Developer CLI developers show what's new what's new in the last release. So that's really super cool. I love that. And there is also a regular blog post series by Savannah.
Yeah. How do you sign up to the Azure Developers thing? How do you get notified of that? Is that just going to YouTube and subscribe and then?
That's kind of the not so cool thing. Is so you might. I mean, you know probably better than me. There is now tons of community stand-ups. Really tons of in this Azure developer channel, and you have to activate your
I need to sign up to more of these. Yeah, because I keep seeing them and missing them. Like the bicep one, I think I've not even been once, and it's the last every month, and I keep missing it.
I think Bicep is even on a different channel, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not in the Azure. So everything around functions, Azure Container Apps,
I need to
static web apps. So you can basically throw away Netflix and Disney Plus because you can spend your time here. What do you need life for if you have the Azure Developer channel?
Well, that's it.
It's really too much from my perspective. I would say if you have to follow up on a lot of topics, but there is no way to exclusively sign up for that. No, I lied. There is one way to get notified. Let me shortly check. It's on the Azure. It's Azure Dev. It's always a good sign if you know it by heart. If you watch the repository, then Savannah is usually announcing the community calls.
I need to do that.
That's
awesome.
The more guided way. Yeah.
Definitely need to get into this. Christian, thank you very much for spending an hour with me showing me this. This has been awesome. I do definitely need to get into this.
Yeah,
it's just time. You know what it's like. You've not got time. You're doing one thing and you want to go and learn something else. It's a time issue.
Yeah, it's. I mean, as I said, so at the moment, it's really. I think it's too much going on. So you really have to focus on something because that's just no longer doable. No way.
Listen, thank you very much for coming on and showing me that. I've been blown away with that. I didn't realize it had infrastructure as code. I knew I had that. I didn't think I had CI/CD and stuff like that. So that's been fabulous.
Cool.
Yeah, brilliant. I think I'm just about out of questions. More questions about you. Have you been on any holidays this year? Done anything cool? Got any holidays left?
Yeah. There are holidays left. So I will be away in November and of course in December around Christmas time. So
okay.
And I will, because you say holidays, I think there is something going on that you organize too, right?
Yeah, I was talking to Richard about that today. We need to start planning that. We've usually started by now, so we're a wee bit behind schedule.
I think I should contribute there. Yeah. Now as you say holiday, that's something that triggered me. Exactly.
Did you go to the MVP summit in America this year? No,
unfortunately not. So
any plans to go next year?
That depends. The point is, I'm kind of, let's say, a very strange person in a sense that I'm working at SAP and doing a lot of Microsoft things. So there to get travel budget for an Azure MVP summit is basically impossible at the moment, unfortunately.
Okay. That's a shame.
And spending your own money.
Yeah, no, don't do that. It's quite expensive. Yeah, don't do that.
Really a lot. So I have to check, but I really would hope to go there next year, and especially to meet the Azure Developer CLI team.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Honestly, it was. I went this year and I was amazed how good it was. Really, really recommend it if you can.
Was it the first time for you last year, or had you been before?
No, it was the first time I'd been. Obviously I'd done the online ones, but first time I'd been there. Yeah, magical. First time I'd been on campus.
I remember you were so kind to take pictures
of people's names.
Exactly. So that was cool. Yeah, I messaged you, and you I think
25 people wanted it. I was there all day. Just go this.
You spent some time in taking
Yeah,
pictures.
it was funny though. It was a good laugh. Everybody kept saying, "You again?" I was like, "Out of the way." Yeah, hopefully I'd get to meet you one day. That'd be awesome if I can get to meet you. That would be great. Listen, thank you very much for your time. Have a good evening. Stay on. Don't go up. What I'll do is I'll play the outro thing, but stay where you are and I'll have a quick chat with you. Listen, thanks very much everyone for watching, and hope you enjoyed it. I thought it was brilliant. So I'm going to go and learn some Azure Developer CLI. Thanks again. Let me just play the outro video.